So I'm Mohamed Elibiary from Plano, yeah, it's up in Collin County. And the angle that I'm coming from on this is that I need to kind of give you a little bit, I'll stick within my 3 minutes, but I need to give you a little bit of background why I'm coming from this perspective. Last October, Secretary Napolitano swore me in. I took my oath on the Homeland Security Advisory Council at DHS. So it's a body of a couple of dozen. It's a statutory body. It's our country's highest policy-making body that advises the Secretary. Just about every major thing since President Bush initially set this up after 9/11 has run through this, and then experts put their best ideas forward, and then whoever the Secretary is works with Congress to implement it. At the same time, that press release that came out in October showed that I had been instrumental in helping to build essentially the domestic intelligence part of our law enforcement community in Texas in partnership with DPS in December 2009. The Texas Fusion Center Policy Council bill that you guys passed out of the House and the Senate and the governor signed last Friday, that's a part of the work that we had done. All of this is to tell you that, you know, when we look at violent extremism, all this kind of crime, that's a broad category that covers everything from homegrown terrorism to the cartels to gangs in the inner cities, this whole broad category. We have a strategic decision as a country. Either we strengthen the resiliency in our population from the bottom up, which is community-oriented policing, the partnerships that you hear about from local and state law enforcement, or you come from the top down with more federal enforcement, which is going to require a lot more surveillance, counterintelligence techniques like more informants in communities, in order to be able to identify those criminal elements that will be exploiting an isolated subculture. If there's this community in Texas that is not feeling comfortable engaging with local law enforcement, they will be exploited. Somebody will come along and feed off of that vulnerability. Enough of those dots get connected, and then you'll have enough economics of scale that we're going to have more violent crime down the road to deal with. This is something that I think strategically as a legislative body, and I'm approaching my 3 minutes, that I think you really do need to recognize that there is longer-term consequences, and if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to go into how we studied this stuff at the federal level and why we pushed for policies that the Secretary announced last August of non-securitizing relationships with communities. Go ahead.
Did you see this weekend's, I think it was the Wall Street Journal that had the article on how, and I'm not sure which federal agency is working with, but they are using an informant to take down some of the hardest of our gang members, the MS-13 in the Bay Area. And they've got this informant, but I think if we're not careful and we completely have law enforcement become law enforcement becomes an arm of immigration, I think we're going to lose the ability to infiltrate, as what you're saying. Is that not correct?
Yes, you're either going to get the tips through soft relationships, or you're going to have to use the hard techniques. And the hard techniques come with their own blowback. And we don't necessarily want to import a lot of those problems into the Texas community. And of course, I can't get ahead of where the department's announcements are coming.
Sure.
But there's been enough, like you heard last Friday, an announcement from the ICE Director Morton. There's also another announcement that he made recently. We're setting up advisory councils because there are more policy modifications around secure communities in 287G and all these programs coming. As a state, we would actually be much wiser, in my opinion, taking a break for the next 2 years, launching interim studies that would actually look at this comprehensively of what would happen here. And as we're building up our own intelligence assets in the state, look at how we can actually more effectively deploy those for the border stuff. And I'm speaking, of course, as a person who's sat through plenty of classified and law enforcement sensitive briefings at the federal level and at the state level here.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Fernando Garcia.